Hey, my name's Stan. Welcome to the Drum Cave. Now, before we get into today's topic, let's get some drums. Now we've got that done, let's quickly brew a coffee. All right, we're ready. Let's get into it. So as some of you will know, every week over at masterminddrummer.com, I write newsletters regarding topics around mindset, systems and habits to help you improve on and off the kit, tips and tricks when it comes to being a professional and how to make money in the space. And a couple of weeks ago, I wrote a newsletter titled Your 2024 Drumming Income Blueprint, 8 Proven Revenue Streams. I love this topic purely because it's incredibly underserviced online. Not many people are talking about it. And secondly, because everyone wants to know how to make money as a drummer, as a musician, as a creative in general. So what I want to do today is flesh out that newsletter and talk about exactly that. 8 ways to make money as a drummer in 2024. Let's dive in. So it's of no surprise that being a full-time musician is tough. We all know that. First, it's finding the work, and then when you do, it becomes a constant struggle to try and find work that you actually resonate with, and that doesn't kill your desire to develop your craft further. Now, even when I say this, it totally sounds like the golden goose, something that's quite unattainable, but it's not, and I can help. Now, I often say this, but one of the biggest mistakes we make as a creative is that we commoditize our craft, so we put a price tag on it. I say this in jest because for a lot of people this is the ultimate goal, but there is some truth to it. Now, you personally may not be looking to be a full-time musician, and I totally get that, and to be honest, in some cases I actually recommend it. But for this video specifically, I'm talking to those that are hoping to make a little bit more cash from their craft in some shape or form. Now, when it comes to income, I've always been quite an open book in the professional space. I've always talked to my students quite candidly about how to make money. Not so much in how much money I make, but more so in how I make the money, because honestly, that's the true value here, how I make it. Now, one thing that I'm a firm believer in is that in this day and age, in 2024, if you want to be a full-time creative, you must diversify. This is key. So in this context, what does that actually mean? It just means multiple streams of income. So pulling your money in from as many areas as you can as a professional musician. Now, I personally do this for a bunch of reasons, but I'm going to give you 2 right now. Number 1, spreading my income across multiple sources lowers my risk. This means that basically if something was to happen that was out of my control, aka lockdowns, remember them? I have other options I can lean into. And number 2, and I'd say that this is the most important one for me, but basically if I don't diversify, I start to lose the joy to play. I'm super hungry and driven on this instrument, but if I don't diversify, I basically just get bored. So I pull from multiple streams of income because it basically keeps me interested in the pursuit of the craft, which is forever the most important thing to me. So the way that I'm going to approach this video is I'm going to start off with the more traditional means, things that you're already familiar with, and then I'll move into the more non-traditional ways of making money. And then the last thing I'll say is that yes, these are all legitimate. These are 100% all the ways that I make money as a full-time drummer in 2024. But, and without a doubt, some of these are definitely going to require some new tools, skills, abilities, basically upskilling in places that are going to help you extract from that income source. Look, nothing is for free in this world, and often to move forward, we need to level up or increase our value in order to move forward and live the life that we want to live. So don't fear learning and don't fear upskilling. Increase your value on and off the kit. All right, so here we go. Number 1, live. Like I said, we're starting with the more traditional route here, and this one should speak for itself. Live is live. But I want to at least explore the spectrum of what playing live means and how we can tap into it as an income source. So outside of playing for free at my friends' parties in my teens, when I was 18 years old, I joined a very active covers band in the area that I was living in. So this was with a bunch of older cats, the guys in the scene, and I was making pretty good money too. I was playing 2, 3, sometimes 4 times a week, and I was getting about $150 to $200 a night. It was really good. But even though the money was good, after a few months of doing it, I actually decided to quit that band and go back to being a full-time barista, which is what I was doing previously. And the reason why is quite simply, it was killing my desire to play the drums. And this was probably the first lesson I had in commoditizing my craft. But I will say, this is just me personally, and I still think it's a fantastic way to make money and a fast way to do so. So where am I at now as a live drummer? Well, basically I only really play with artists that I truly get excited about and music that I think lends itself to my style. So lately here in NZ, it's been with artists like Georgia Line, Stan Sharp, my friends Tikitane, Fran Corda, Lawton Corda, and my band, Black Comet, and then things just pop up and I can weigh them up then and there. So for example, recently I was contacted by Natasha Bedingfield, a UK artist recommended by Kimbra, and she needs a drummer for New Zealand and Australia at the end of the year and asked if I can help, which I can. It's pop, it's fun, the shows are great, it's going to be cool. So yeah, I have my regulars and then just keep working on my playing and promoting myself, and things will pop up as they do because that's the way the universe works. In terms of fee, it varies so much so that it can start at $500 and end at $3,000 per show. It really depends. Now, the level and the type of gig you do will come down to 3 things. Number 1, knowing the gig that you want to do. Whether it's playing at a pub or playing for a major artist, it honestly doesn't matter. Just set the intention, know what your goal is, and start moving towards it. Number 2, and definitely one of the most important parts of this, the quality of player that you are. Now, I read a lot of Greek philosophy as I really identify with it, and something that Aristotle famously said is that water will find its level. So the way that I interpret that in terms of this context is that I firmly believe your playing will match the gigs that you get. So if you want more, increase your value on the kit by working harder, dial in those areas that you're struggling with, and then get your playing out there via networking and social media so everyone can actually see what you're doing. And number 3, also extremely important, the quality of person that you are. Seriously, I say this all the time, but what you do on the kit is only half of the story. You need to be an absolute legend off the kit too. So this just basically means just don't be a dick. This industry is super small, word gets around really, really quick. You're basically a walking business card of who you are as a person, so carry yourself with that in mind. So we've covered live, let's move on to number 2, studio work. So once again, this one speaks for itself, but there are levels and I want to get into it. Now, my position on studio work is a little bit different to live. In the studio, I'm happy to work with artists that I may not necessarily play with live, and that's purely because I enjoy the process when it comes to recording. I really enjoy dialing in sounds, working with the artist, figuring out what the song needs and everything that comes with it. I very much enjoy that process. And I do this in one of 2 ways. Either in my studio or somebody else's studio. And those 2 options are pretty different because if you're hiring a studio, you're also hiring an engineer and then you're hiring a drummer, which is super expensive. Whereas if you just hire me, you get me in my room with all my gear and it's sort of like a one and done. Now, to have your own studio is quite a high bar of entry, and I've been playing for 27 years and it's taken me this long to have this studio with this setup with this type of gear. It's much harder for us than bass players and guitarists to come in and offer our services that we control at our end because everything's super expensive. I mean, I've got 14 microphones on that kit. Whereas with the bass or guitar, you can just chuck one mic in front of the amp or just go DI. So I do acknowledge that it's a high bar of entry for drummers, don't worry. I have 2 Apogee Element 88s and they're a few grand worth each. Microphones that must be around 15 to 20k at this point. And then a couple of computers to run it all. So with anything video related, I run it through my iMac, and anything audio related, I run it through my M1. But if it comes to studio work, much like live, just work on your playing, increase your value. Everything you do in the studio is under a microscope. There's not much room to move when it comes to mistakes. So your dynamics, your touch, your feel, your groove, pretty much everything has to be to a very high standard. The highest, I'd say, which is a good thing. Now, the last part that I will add on to this is that if you do have your own home studio, you can look at using a website like Fiverr. So basically you go on to Fiverr and you offer your services and you set up tiers in terms of what your cost is. And then what happens is artists can go on Fiverr and look for a drummer, find the right price point that matches them, and that may be you. So now let's get on to number 3, one-on-one lessons. Once again, it speaks for itself. It's pretty damn obvious what I mean by this. But I've gone through a journey with this myself personally, so it needs to be discussed. Now, in some shape or form, I've been teaching for over 22 years now, believe it or not. So when I was 18 years old, around the time that I was in that covers band, I was also given a roster of about 20 students by a drummer that was leaving town. This was great because it was like a crash course in figuring out how I do what I do and a curriculum to match that in a real cohesive way. Because as you know, it's one thing to be able to play something, but can you teach it? And how do you teach it? And it also helped me figure out what's important at different levels of playing. So, for a beginner, is working on chops the thing that they need? Probably not. But when you're getting into intermediate to advanced, maybe opening up your facility is something that's worth investing in. So for me with teaching, much like live in studio, it's very much on my terms. I don't teach beginners anymore, and that's just because I've found that over the years, if I do teach beginners, it tends to become detrimental to my own personal growth. So what I do now is essentially I focus in on advanced players and teach the curriculum that I specialize in. So mechanics, facility, single kick development, anything to do with opening up your voice or your creativity on the kit. And what this means too is because I've focused my teaching in on areas that I specialize in, I can then charge more for it. Now, pricing is hard as often people just want the work, and then what they do is they end up punching the industry down, so charging next to nothing. But my price is currently $100 US for 60 minutes, and it's actually going up soon because I feel like my time's worth more and I'm not actually looking for more students. But that's a personal journey. Now let's get on to number 4, selling drum products. So now we're heading into the more obscure ways of generating money. So I actually started selling drum gear online about 15 years ago, or 10 to 15 years ago. I was a Pearl endorsee at the time, and I was using their Pearl Eliminator pedal, which I absolutely love. It's a great pedal, but I never liked the grips on the pedal. So what I created with my dad was a smooth custom footboard plate that he made for just my pedals. And then what happened is I started sharing photos of the pedal online. People started showing interest in it, and then I created a way in which they could purchase them, got a bunch made, and started selling them. At this point, I've sold hundreds of these worldwide. And now I have 3 drum products that I've created. So the Pearl custom footboard, these aluminium practice sticks that I make locally. They're 4 times heavier than a regular 5B. They're modeled off a 5B, and I use them for sessions to do with power, stamina. It's essentially weight training for the hands. And then there's the grab and go stick bag, which I made to solve my own problem, which was just having the sticks a little bit more accessible than over to the side. It goes down between your legs on the snare drum, and it's just super handy to have them there. Now, once again, I must iterate that these were products that were to solve my own problems. That's how they started. And I think that's how you need to think about things. You have made tweaks to your gear. You have done things to your gear that have solved your problems. Think about it. Can they become a product? And if so, explore your options. I mean, you never know. You might have the next big fat snare drum in your head, or even these, the tandem drops. These are amazing. So yeah, this will come down to just thinking a little bit more abstractly, zooming out a little bit more laterally, and trying to think of ways that you can create something to give to the drum industry. And then 3 years ago, I actually took a step further with this. 2 years after already being an endorsee with this company, I decided to become the New Zealand distributor for Vincent drumsticks. Now, this was a big undertaking as I needed a massive amount of capital to start this whole thing off, which just means I had to buy the stock. Now, I did have the capital because for many years I worked in another industry alongside my drumming career, and before I moved back to New Zealand from Melbourne, I sold that business, got a bunch of cash, and used that to set up some other things at this end. And being the Vincent drumsticks distributor was one of them. All right, we're over halfway. Number 5, group coaching. So this year on January 1st, I started my Mastermind Drummer 30-day coaching program, an idea that I've had floating around my head for some time now. So if you've been following my content for the last 6 months, you will know that the whole premise behind the 30-day coaching program is developing the person alongside the player. Now, this just came to be as an extension of my one-on-one teaching, so attracting an audience that identified with this message. But essentially what I teach over those 30 days is a piece of personal development, so health, well-being, relationships, and business, alongside a piece of my drum curriculum. So we do a week for each subject over the 30 days. Now, I've run many of these 30-day coaching programs now for drummers all over the world, and I charge a lot for it. So I charge $297 USD for this, which can sound like a lot, but the reason why I charge high for it is because you get access to me over the whole 30 days. I do a live lesson at the start of every week, but you actually get access to me every other day as well via messages and emails and things like that. And then the other part of it is that it actually covers a good portion of my drum curriculum too. So it sounds like a lot, but to be honest, it's not a lot. And I'm actually going to put the price up soon too, because I am releasing my 2.0 version of this. I'm taking it to the next level. I've had such great results from these 30-day programs, and the feedback's been incredible that it's inspired me to push it even further. And that's what I'm doing going forward. So yes, I understand that this is quite a unique concept when it comes to revenue stream, but it's more so trying to inspire you to think outside the box. I would say that the 30-day program leans into my strengths. So the things that I teach are the things that I practice, and these are the things that I promote, and that's what created the 30-day program. In my social media, I talk a lot about health, well-being, relationships, and progress, and business, and things to sort of help you dial in off the kit as much as on the kit. So it's a natural extension for me to do this. And what I want you to do is think about those things that are special to you that you can then offer as a service as well if it comes to a coaching program. It's very much a labor of love for me. Let's keep it moving. Number 6, lifetime access to online courses. Now, I'm of the opinion that if you've solved a problem, it's a problem that someone else is dealing with and you can help them. I've thought about this for a long time before I finally executed it. And the reason why is because I didn't really know for a long time where my curriculum or my ideas separated from the rest of the industry. There's lots of people selling drum courses out there. So what makes my courses unique? What separates me from them? And for me, it was locking into my strengths. So like I said, mechanics, facility development, single kick technique, creativity, extracting your voice out of the instrument, but then also this personal development side to things as well, which is very much who I am as a person. And then offering all that up in a course. Now, you'll remember at the start of this video, I talked about you might need to upskill in certain areas, so increase your value. And this is definitely one of those cases. So the bar of entry is extremely high to do this. And what I mean is that I do all of this myself. So I create the courses, I do all the filming, I do all the editing, I do all the script writing, making sure that the information flows in a way that it's cohesive, understandable. But then I do all the back end work too. So I do all the website maintenance, I organize the courses going online, I launch them, I send out weekly emails to promote them, I run the payment systems. Everything that you need to do to run an online course service, I do myself. So I'd be lying if I said it wasn't hard. It definitely was, and there were definitely many sleepless nights. And then to rub salt in the wound, I decided to do this just after having a brand new baby too. So it was like sleepless nights on top of sleepless nights. But if you're committed and determined and your goal is to do that, you'll do it. There's plenty of time to sleep. So that's something to think about too. Taking your intellectual property, your IP, and turning it into a modularized course that can help people move forward. Number 7, mentorship. So separate from my one-on-ones and my coaching program, I also mentor as well. So I know you're asking, what's the difference here? What's the difference between my one-on-one lessons and my 30-day when it comes to mentorship? Well, basically it comes down to the investment from both parties. This is not to undervalue what I do with my one-on-ones, but with one-on-ones, because you've got an hour or an hour and a half, they tend to be more drum curriculum focused with a little bit of that personal development stuff, but people tend to come to me more for one-on-ones because they're trying to increase their value on the kit, with a bit of a kick up the ass for the off the kit stuff too. Whereas with mentorship, it's a lot more customized and a lot more involved from both parties. Now, having this as an option for an income stream really comes down to you having value that you can offer as a mentor. I've been playing for 27 years, as I said, teaching for over 22. I've worked in most parts of the industry now, small, medium, large, touring, studio, Drumeo, creating courses, business, personal brand. I've done it all, and that actually does have a value. And then to top it all off, I've got a heavy interest in personal development, which I can share with you as well. So I suppose that really comes down to you knowing your value, knowing at which point you can pass on that value, and backing yourself too. And the price varies because it really depends on what the person needs. But in short, I charge a lot for it because it requires a lot from me. And finally, we're here. Number 8, brand deals. Now, before we start, I want to preface this with saying that when it comes to gear, I only play the gear that I love to play. I'm not led by offers. I'm not led by opportunities. For me, it starts with playing what excites me. But with that in mind, I'm really fortunate to say that some of the companies that I work with actually pay me for what I do. I know it's hard to believe, but it's true. Now, this is case by case, and not every company is willing to pay for exposure. But aside from receiving gear as compensation, which is really common in the drum industry, I actually get paid by some of my companies too. Now, I won't go into specifics because there's actually contracts that say that I can't, but just know if you increase your value, you can get paid for what you do too. So there we have it, 8 ways to generate income as a drummer in 2024. What I want to do now is a little bit of a bonus round. I want to chuck in a 9th, only because it needs to be talked about more and in a positive light. I think this option is incredibly important and super undervalued, and I want to make sure I leave here on this note. The 9th way to generate money as a drummer in 2024 is supplementation. Know this, there is absolutely nothing wrong with generating money from a different industry as a professional drummer. So for me personally, in my mid-20s when my kids were quite young, I pulled back from touring so I could stay local, and I set up an espresso bar to pay the bills. This then led on to a wholesale coffee roastery, and it's that business that I sold many years later, just before moving back here to New Zealand. Now, the financial freedom that this gave me at the time cannot be understated. I was able to work on my craft, develop my voice, increase my value, and to be honest, that's the connective tissue through all of these, increasing my value, but on and off the kit. The value that you bring in any given situation, on and off the drums, will always determine the opportunities that you get and the financial outcome of those opportunities. So there you have it. I hope that was helpful. I hope it was inspiring. And if you're interested in hearing me talk about more of these sort of topics, you can subscribe to my free weekly newsletter over at masterminddrummer.com, where you'll also see all the courses that I do and a bunch of free videos and things like that. So check it out. Thanks for watching. See you at the next one.